We called them the Horrors, and named each after the gods, those whose legs reached the bottom of the sea, and arms that stretch up to the heavens, both giving and taking life, bearing stars that wink to those who know they are alive. For if you were to stare at God and found it staring back at you, would you be no less than horrified? For those who grew up along the coast that reflects California's Channel Islands, the oil rigs have always been, and they always would be. Until now. The industry is dying. Although the general public is shifting towards environmental consciousness and climate action, residents' opinions are not as unanimous as one might assume.
Who would look at them as anything other than incredibly ugly and disgusting and dangerous?
I just don't pay attention to that stuff. They're out there making money, and that's good.
That's the first thing I noticed as I drove in. I was like, there's so many ships. Turns out they were oil rigs.
See, that depends. During the day, yes, they're eyesore, but at night, yeah, it is kind of cool to see the lights. So I know, I think they've been there so long, just kind of like used to them.
Actually, I didn't know what it is at the first time, and I asked him.
My dad told me that there used to be a lot of like tar on the beaches from the oil rigs, and when I went to the beach, I haven't seen that. So I guess they maybe have done a better job cleaning it up, which I would appreciate.
Well, when my grandchildren were small, I thought they were great pirate ships when we were camping because it made for great stories. But now I have a different feeling about them.
They don't bother me. They look neat. They're kind of like Christmas trees out there.
I don't really notice them that much, so they look fine.
Aesthetically, I mean, it's something to notice. You know, typically you don't have that. I'm an environmentalist and I study geology, so I know a lot about them and I know a lot of the harm they cause. So morally, not a huge fan of them.
I don't know, because I know some people who actually work out there. But then I also know the importance of our environment that we live in.
I think they're great.
They're
Everything
great?
about them, yeah. I like them aesthetically. I mean, I've grown up in the area, so I've seen them my whole life, and I would be very sad if they left.
Right.
There's a sense of mourning among some individuals within the community. But how far back does the connection go? The history of offshore drilling in California dates back to 1896, off the coast of a small village named Summerland, only 6 miles south of Santa Barbara. By 1902, upwards of 180 wells had been drilled into the seafloor. Even before there was an oil industry, there was usage for the natural seepage, or more commonly called tar. This tar was used by Chumash people for a variety of purposes: glue, chewing gum, waterproofing baskets and canoes, and creating casts for broken bones, being only the beginning of the list. Santa Barbara's culture, for as long as there has been one, is inherently interwoven with oil. Even now, this resource remains significant. These are pillars of the landscape, and symbols of a resource that has forever been important to those who live here. Now, in current times, they are also the paycheck for hundreds of families.
My name is Chris Shoemaker. I've been a paramedic for almost 2 decades now. I had the opportunity to work with a contract position on the oil platform Holly. For the better part of 2 years, I worked on the platform, functioning primarily as a paramedic. So when you first go out there, you don't really have this understanding because you're so far away from everything. Your assumption is that you're going to be disconnected from the world. But a platform's like a city. There are people that need to be in touch with people all over the United States, talking to people in Houston, talking to people onshore. We had Wi-Fi. And it was high-speed Wi-Fi. And they have TVs that are streaming Netflix, and there are platforms that are 10 times the size of Holly that have what they describe as hotels. You know, it's an incredible source. It's an industry, and if you stop an industry without utilizing its people, you're going to have a huge economic impact. And people forget that, you know, and they forget that the industry, it creates jobs not only on the platforms, but people onshore. If you end something like that without a plan in place, it could be disastrous.
But anyway, to all my family members, this is my world. This buys my boots and things for you. Trust me.
January 28th, 1969. Workers drilling the fifth well beneath Platform A attempt to remove the drill bit from a 3,479-foot deep tunnel they had just completed. Unbeknownst to them, this would trigger the following disaster. Oil and mud exploded into the air and covered the inside of the rig, along with the workers, in a thick layer of tar. All employees, except for those tasked with plugging the well, were evacuated. It took 13 minutes to stop the oil at the top of the pipe. Beneath the surface, the blowout had begun to escape through openings in the seafloor. The fifth well lacked something the others did have: conductor casting. Federal regulations at the time required at least 300 feet of conductor casting, as well as a steel tube called surface casting. Neither of these were present on the fifth well below 238 feet. The 62 feet of unprotected pipe was the culprit for the resulting disaster. Over a period of 24 hours, the oil had spread from the surrounding area of the platform to the Channel Islands and waters off the coast of Ventura County. Uncontrolled were another 5 separate rips in the seafloor. By January 5th, mainland residents could smell the tar from their homes. The beaches were black. Birds littered the shore, covered in oil, both dying and dead. Barnacle populations dropped by as much as 90%. And as for other species, the damage is unknown to this day.
My name is Milton Love. I'm a research biologist at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I've been conducting research on the role that oil platforms play as fish habitat since 1995. When a spill occurs, it depends on what is actually spilled as to the amount of damage that's caused, and a lot of other factors, water temperature, the amount of storms, and so forth. That's hard to know. It's easy to quantify, well, how many seabirds died, for instance, or oiled and then died. But it's very hard to quantify, were any fish affected, or were any plankton affected, and I don't think there's any really good studies that showed that. There may have been damage, there may not have been damage. I don't know.
The city of Santa Barbara received $4 million in damages. Accounting for inflation, that is the equivalent of $31.7 million at the release of this film. Though it is not only the environment that suffers. Mud, water, and methane. These were the ingredients that led to the Deepwater Horizon explosion and the death of 11 men.
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please be seated.
Top executives of BP, Transocean, and Halliburton responded in time-honored fashion to congressional scrutiny, deadly and disastrous Gulf oil well blowout. On owner and operator Transocean responded to send the blowout that prevented down, causing accident. There must and then anyway, the BP has dismantled the operator the well. Are the well properly companies come to Transocean with their products as the oil releases been slow, President Barack Obama, fellow Senator, last hearing in disclosure,
The explosion literally rips the door from the hinges, impacts me and takes me to the other side of the shop. And I'm up against the wall when I finally come around with a door on top of me. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, this is it. I'm gonna die right here.
You lost 11 shipmates.
Yes, sir, I did. Some of which I was very close to.
I was prepared and trained for people to die out there because that's an inherent risk with the job, and the training, it's so pushed by the industry to be safe that they make sure that everybody's trained. Especially in my role, they made sure that the paramedics that were working out there were the best paramedics. They were the most experienced paramedics. They had the understanding of the risks out there. One of the big dangers out on the platform is a gas called H2S. H2S gas is a poisonous gas, basically causes immediate brain damage. So people, go unconscious because of it. It actually poisons the brain. So, one of the things you see is people drop, then having seizure-like activity before dying. It also displaces oxygen, so there's a suffocation risk associated with it. It's definitely one of those things you don't want to experience, you don't want to breathe in, because it's not going to end up being a survivable event, so it's treated very seriously. I remember the first time it happened, it was in the middle of the night, and we were, as part of our safety meeting that day, we were made aware that there was a potential for the presence of H2S gas with the work that was being done, and they were moving from one well to another, so there are multiple sensors all over the vessels, and there are different alarms that are audible out there, and what an H2S alarm sounds like. It's this very loud beep, 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 and there's a voice, right, as one of the people in the production office that says, we've detected an H2S gas release, proceed with the safety evacuation. Is this a real big release? Like, are we going to be off this vessel? Is it here present with us? But your equipment's working, so you're breathing the air, and then you start to think of, I got 20 minutes. It's been about 12 minutes. We just speed this thing up, but your heart rate elevates, your blood pressure goes up, and you're thinking about, okay, I want to retain my air. I don't want to breathe too fast. I don't want to panic. And everybody out there, you can tell the people that it's their first time being out there. And I'm sure they could tell when that alarm went off for the first time, because I was like, oh shit. We talked about H2S gas. One of the other things is fire. With when you think about oil and gasoline, it's combustible. And so fire is a significant risk. Some of the other dangers that, you may not think of are falls. It's almost every 2-3 months, somewhere in the world, there's somebody that dies on an oil platform due to a fall. Traumatic injuries is another risk that happens out there. A lot of the devices that you use are very powerful. So along with fire-resistant clothing, you have to wear what are called impact gloves. And so they're specially designed gloves so that if there was like a impact of weight, it gives you some protection from that. One of the guys I worked out there with was a guy from down in the San Bernardino area, and he had a major event happen where he fell like 4 stories down and was medevaced off a different platform. And they provide good care. He's working. He wasn't injured to the point where he couldn't keep doing his job, and he would share that story to reiterate safety for people. It's hyped up. I think that's fake news a lot, with people thinking that the industry, people who drive cars, they die on the freeway, much higher rate than people that are dying offshore.
This line of work is an inherently dangerous job, though currently stands as a necessary one. At the publication of this film, there is no infrastructure that can replace the energy the rigs produce. Removing them so swiftly could have extreme consequences for modern life. Planes, trains, and cars would have to get fuel elsewhere, potentially from overseas. The lights, oven, and water heater in your home would cease to function if fossil fuels disappeared. Electric cars wouldn't be able to charge, and the internet would shut down, as the energy grid is powered by crude oil. As it stands, the world would come to a screeching halt. Not only would everything dependent on energy cease to function, but 10.3 million people in the US alone would be put out of a job. However, that doesn't mean the future is bleak. In fact, it is closer than ever. According to Yale, the world is on track to triple renewable power by 2030. Santa Barbara's own solutions, such as solar and wind power, have already made headway in the county. Other green solutions, such as wave power and nuclear energy, are also at the forefront of progression, and as gas prices rise and renewable alternatives become cheaper, safer, more dependable, and more accessible, soon enough, the oil rigs will become functionally obsolete. In 2023, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, also known as the BSEE, decided that all offshore structures must be dismantled in the coming years. Though removal may not be the solution.
It's got its challenges, which are really cool to deal with, but there's nothing like being out on the water and seeing the sunrise or the sunset being offshore. You see some of the most amazing things. Whales, tons of dolphins, sharks. I saw orca whales for the first time in California being offshore, and that's an experience that I didn't expect in the Santa Barbara Channel. So those are the things that you want to go back for. It's fun. It's a different work environment, and it's beautiful. And it's an industrial setting, but it's really actually beautiful. We all drive our cars, for the most part, run on gasoline. I know there's been some technology that's advanced where cars are electric or hybrid now, but I don't feel we're at a point where it's safe to cut off the oil supply to the population. You know, and I understand that there's a better way to design a device, or, you know, technology advances, but the technology is not there for the population, for us to heat our homes, for us to drive our cars, for us to cook our food. We're just not there yet. You know, we forget about how much stuff that we use in the medical world that comes from plastics, and plastics are in a large part produced from petroleum. And so, you know, these are things that are saving people's lives, and people forget about that. Some people see them as an eyesore. I like them. You know, and especially working on the platform, you get to really understand the beauty of the structures, you know, not only above the water, but below the water. They'll come up and show us pictures of these beautiful coral reefs and environments that have been built around the structures, to where, you know, if we take them down, it's like destroying a very, very, very large reef, and it's a home to so many different invertebrates and fish and marine wildlife that they've learned to coexist with the platforms, and it's really cool. It's beautiful.
Sometimes the decisions are made purely on political, social ones. On the other hand, sometimes decisions are made based on, well, these seem like just great big reefs made out of steel. Why would we remove them? All platforms off California have similar invertebrates living on them. So from the intertidal part of a platform down to about 60-ish feet, the platform is covered in mussels, and all of the animals that associate with mussels, sea anemones, nudibranchs, barnacles, all of those animals, many, many, many species, sponges. And then the deeper you go, the more things change, and that's true of natural reefs too. Depth is the great driver. Essentially every inch of steel, and all platforms are made out of steel, every inch of steel, every centimeter of steel is covered in some kind of marine life, because that's the way nature works. You have Garibaldis, you have sheephead, and you have opali, and all kinds of fish, just as you'd find on natural reefs. And then the deeper you go, the more the fish populations change, and you get fishes that like to live in deeper natural reefs. One of the primary functions of most oil platforms off California is to act as a nursery ground. So we're talking about fishes that are maybe 6 months old, or 8 months old. It's best if you think of platforms as very vertical reefs made out of steel. And the fishes themselves and the invertebrates, they don't care that it's steel instead of rock. Potentially, it would be part of the solution. So if that's your goal, if your goal is to help maintain or maybe even increase the number of certain species of fish, then maintaining platforms would probably be a useful tool amongst a whole tool chest full of tools. I hope you're going to be getting it.
Look at that.
Yeah, it was tons of fun. We did it every fall for, I don't know, 18 years or something. And it was great. So we did this, we used it primarily below scuba depth. So even down to like 1,200 feet of water. So it gives you an idea, a frame of reference. It's the size of a phone booth. Platform is covered in sea life. There'll be a close-up in a moment. There you go. I mean, there was like 30,000 of just this species alone, let alone all the other species. Some parts, there were so many that you could barely see the platform for all the fish. Sea lions live on that lower landing, and then they live on the buoys. Seals, because they're not good at hauling themselves out, they tend to live on the beaches here. And whether they come out here or not to feed, I don't know. They're certainly capable of doing it. But sea lions, I think primarily California sea lions, are all over the place on these. In fact, they'll walk up the catwalks. So anyway, there's just more of this.
Beneath the surface, life clings to every beam of the platform. However, legislation now threatens this bountiful habitat. The BSEE's initiative would effectively kill every plant and animal that has made the submerged areas of the platform home. Some of the proposed methods of removal even involve usage of explosives. This is a revelation to most. The industrial topside is no reflection of its hidden treasure.
A Santa Barbara-based nonprofit is planning to transform an old oil rig into a Santa Barbara County eco-monument.
And News Channel reporter Mina Wahab joins us live from Goleta to explain. Mina.
The nonprofit is called America's Green Corps, and they're working on what they call a green lighthouse monument. They are transforming a non-operational oil rig called Platform Holly. Experts like founder of America's Green Corps, Ryan Davis, say an estimated 2 tons of marine biology lives off the coast of Goleta around Platform Holly.
If we remove the platform, unfortunately, all of that marine biology will go away.
Hi, my name is Ryan Davis. I'm the founder and creative director of America's Green Corps. We are the authors, architects, and developers of a technological peace and conflict resolution strategy that improves public safety and works to resolve global warming through the transformation of our Earth and space infrastructure. I'm a former active duty Marine, and I worked extensively in in and around oil infrastructure, both protecting it and assessing it for safety. For our pilot project, we are conveying our organizational vision to transform through a project we're calling the Green Lighthouse, which involves a non-operational oil platform like the one that you see behind me here into a green lighthouse, ocean energy, and aquaculture research site. So as you may know, the substructure has several metric tons of marine biology. If we are to remove the platform, it is a high-risk procedure. The impacts of that on the ecology that is attached to the substructure and the surrounding ecology, is unknown. The idea to leave it in place and evolve the platform into the Green Lighthouse is one that has been supported by many people as we follow a rigs to reef approach to transforming the oil platform. Recognizing that people have rather benefited from those becoming a habitat that produces food and ultimately has a role as fishery enhancement, we see the removal as being problematic in that we would not be helping the marine ecosystem, but actually taking key habitat away from it. Furthermore, if the Green Lighthouse project was able to move forward, we envision actually taking the substructure and potentially creating more marine reef through its growth, through its transformation. And the idea that the platform can essentially grow into a sea tree is a really good mental image for you to have to see what we hope to achieve through this project. If we were to remove all of the oil platforms, we would not only be missing an opportunity, but we would also be ultimately degrading the marine water quality, because the marine biology that is attached to the substructure helps filter and oxygenate the water. And I'm not saying that all oil platforms in the area have to stay put. The idea is to take one of them, create a model site. There's also a significant interest in growing reef and marine biology. The interest is related to people seeing the ocean as the future food source for the world. To utilize that infrastructure, like the oil platforms, for the purpose of aquaculture research and/or rearing of food is potentially a great way to recycle the oil infrastructure. We would be missing out on a huge financial opportunity as well to pioneer the technology that would be involved in this transformative process. We recognize that a lot of people have different feelings about the oil infrastructure, and that's understandable. We've had some really bad incidences in the past that polluted our waters and put a lot of hurt in people's hearts regarding the oil industry. However, we feel that there is no way of knowing that the oil platform can be removed safely. The integrity of the seafloor has already been impacted from the well lines, which go thousands of feet into the ground. The removal of the platform itself could pose a risk to upsetting or destabilizing the integrity of the seafloor, which may result in an impact to the seeps that are already there and still continue to this day to seep regularly. This is what I was meant to do. If I'm not able to complete the project here, if California decides that they're not interested in focusing on this technology development or pioneering this strategy, then I will go somewhere else. And we will miss out. The oil infrastructure could be evolved. So rather than take down the great giant, we could just as easily commission them to lead this initiative. And we could do that through the repurposing of the seed fund or the decommissioning funds to act as a seed fund for one pilot project. One pilot project. We study the findings from the project and all can benefit from this. Santa Barbara is the birthplace of offshore oil. So think about the message that we are conveying by showing the world how we can evolve our foundational oil infrastructure into the renewable grid.
When green infrastructure to compensate for the energy produced by the oil rigs is created, then it may be time to lay the giants to rest. Employees of the oil rigs can be transferred to work at these new facilities, ensuring job security. And for the structures, there is a clear consensus. Both experts and the public say the structures must remain in place. Perhaps these titans should not serve as a token of corporate greed. Perhaps they are symbols of nature overcoming all obstacles, to not forget our history, and to have an optimistic outlook for the future. Generations after us may look out at the very same coastline and not see looming harbingers of death, but towering guardians of life.